Welcome to the Empty Nest Kitchen, where we're finding fun in the kitchen now that the kids have flown the coop. I'm Christine Van Bloom, a cooking teacher with over 25 years of experience, here to show you tips, tricks, and joy in your kitchen, all while trying something new. Let's get cooking.
Well, hey, everyone. Listen, I am so excited because I am back to the interviews, baby. And am I introducing the most delightful woman to y'all? Yes, of course I am. Say hello to Paula Mohammed of In My Kitchen with Paula. Hey, Paula.
Hey, Christine. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have this chat with you. I'm thrilled.
Oh, we are going to have a good time. We met through a woman that we both worked with in California, and Paula is coming to us today from Vancouver, BC, right?
Correct.
British Columbia? Yes.
Yep.
I got my geography down. Our neighbors are kinder, gentler neighbors to the north. Well, thank you so much for coming on, because you also have a podcast, right?
I do. It's In My Kitchen with Paula. And it was interesting because as we were just discussing when, I've been following you for a long time, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're talking to the same people, and we have a lot of the same values, like embracing life, well-being and flourishing. And I do it through food as well, but really about exploring culture through food in our travels. And I started the podcast because I was trying to find stories and get behind the kitchen door, if you will, from people who were from the regions that I was wanted to visit or where I was going. And I had a hard time finding that. So this was sort of an offshoot of the original version of In My Kitchen, which was a business that I started back in 2018.
Oh, wow. So you were having a hard time, even in this whole, I feel like our world has gotten so tiny with how accessible everything is. But you had to start your own podcast to be able to talk to the people.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when I started In My Kitchen, it was, everything that has driven me in all my different pivots that have happened over the last few years is about building understanding or increasing understandings between cultures cross-culturally. And that goes back to my upbringing. And I always wanted it to be like you do, Christine. I wanted to bring things to people in a fun, casual, engaging way and all about connection. So the original version of In My Kitchen is I recruited and vetted these amazing people. They're passionate home cooks from different cultures. And then people would sign up online and then go to their homes and learn traditional recipes. And then everybody would sit down and share a meal together. And it was just beautiful. It was all about hospitality. People got really comfortable, could ask questions. And we had hosts ranging from Qatar to Vietnam, Rashtaran, and then COVID hit, and then you and I met because pivot number one. What do we do now?
Yeah, and then well, go ahead, keep going. I'm so excited. I have so many questions.
Yeah, and so then through the pivots, we did the online thing as well for a while. But even when I started In My Kitchen, I wanted to have a podcast show, and then I was too nervous to do it, and a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm now 55, and the beauty of 55 is you're kind of like, it's as it is, like, who cares, whatever, I'm putting it out there.
You're so right.
Yeah, but it wasn't like that for me in 2018. I still had I was very shy growing up, and people are always surprised to hear that, but there's definitely a layer of that continues. So anyway, I really passionately believed that talking to somebody who's from that region, you just, I had learned from our online experiences and in-person experiences, the hospitality piece that comes through that's very unique to all the different places and regions. And I find sometimes it's challenging to get that and those values and how different cultures communicate when it's not with somebody who's from that region. When it's, don't get me wrong, I love Rick Steves, I love Anthony Bourdain, I love Somebody Feed Phil. I think it's amazing what everybody brings to the table. But what I love about all three of those individuals is their conversations with people from specific regions over food. And so I was having a hard time finding that for a podcast show when I was looking for information. I forget where I was going. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to do this myself. I've already got 7 of our own hosts who would be my first 7 guests because, and it was awesome. I think to this day, one of my best episodes is still the very first one we did with Layla from Rashtaran. I was so nervous. We both were. We're both like, oh my God, what do we do? How do we do this?
What? Okay. So forgive my ignorance. I had
Yeah.
never heard of Rashtaran.
Yes. Yeah.
What?
So-
Tell me what that is. And I'm embarrassed to ask, but
No.
I know at least one of my 4 listeners feels the same way.
You know what? I've learned that if like there's no question that is a question to feel embarrassed about. And that was the whole point of In My Kitchen, is to provide a space online or in person where you could feel comfortable to ask that question. So Rashtaran is in the northern part of Iran, and it's unique. Actually, I if anyone's interested, I highly recommend doing some Google search or listening to the podcast, because it's actually unique and a little bit different than the rest of Iran. It was kind of a place where there was a little bit more leniency around how women were out in society at different times. So in the 70s, everything was pretty open, and then they went through the first phase. So the reason why is because rice is their major export. Now, all of this I learned from Layla. This isn't me being really smarter at worldly. But rice is their major export, and their major industry. And so the women were the ones that were out in the rice field. So they had to have their sleeves rolled up, and they weren't wearing any, their dresses or pants or whatever rolled up. So there was a little bit of leniency around what women could do in Rashtaran. So it's very interesting chatting to Layla, especially when you start talking about, she starts talking about Persian vodka, and you're like, well, hang on a second. How's that? Because I thought, alcohol is illegal. Well, it is, but every home makes their own vodka.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Super
Oh my
interesting.
gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also what was really interesting is, of course, I'm always asking about the flow of the daily meals and what does that look like? So I think you learn so much about a culture, right? From that, you'll know that through your Mediterranean meal plans and whatnot. And so the role of hospitality is huge. And it's actually from people after dinner go from home to home. And her stories about how their children, it was very difficult to raise children there, which is one of the reasons they left. Well, she left before they had children. I can't remember. But the reason is because the children are exposed to and live one life behind the doors of homes, hence the Persian vodka, the different, whatever happened. But when you go to school, you can't be telling necessarily everything that you're living in your own reality at home.
Right.
So it's very challenging, as you could imagine. Yeah.
Well, kids are not known for their discretion now, are they? So,
yeah.
So I think, at this time, especially, I think trying to bridge culture gaps and trying to find commonalities and to really celebrate other cultures is so incredibly important, and I'm saying this as somebody who grew up in the most basic of basic places in South Central PA. And I say that with love. I want you to know I say that with love. But it's, to me, it's so exciting to learn about, even at my old age, right? It's so exciting to learn about all of these different places. I mean, heck, I never even heard of that before. So now I think food is this really great equalizer, right? Because it's something you got to eat, right? And if you can't, I always say, if you can't, I cannot help you, right? Like you have bigger issues. But it's all about food and trying all of the different things. I mean, listen, there is a Pakistani, I think it's Pakistani. No, is it Pakistani or is it Palestinian? I think it's Palestinian. It is a restaurant from a country that starts with a P. I feel so ignorant saying that. It's here in my town. It's called Hinzi's Kitchen. And my son goes bananas for it. He just absolutely loves it. So he went and got lunch today, and I scored lunch, which was amazing. And to me, I'm like, it's so good, and it's so interesting, and it's so different from how I grew up. I think people nowadays, they don't remember that here in the States, we had a restaurant called Chi-Chi's,
Okay.
and it was terrible, but it was like a chain Mexican food restaurant. And it was truly the only option, like where I went to college, where I lived, all of that. It was the only option. And then you had the requisite Chinese food place, and there was only one, like in the whole area I grew up in, there was only one restaurant. And now it's exploded, and you can find all of these different places, right? So many different places. And
Mhm.
learning through more than just the food, but learning about the culture is
Mhm.
so fascinating. It's why I do. I mean, you hit the big three when you're talking about middle-aged white men, right? With Bourdain and sorry guys, that's for Jason, who I know listens, but Bourdain and Rick Steves and Phil. And excuse me, I love Somebody Feed Phil because I mean I loved Bourdain. You got but I mean I was always convinced I was going to get lung cancer just watching him, right? But when there's something about Somebody Feed Phil, like whenever a new season comes out, I watch the whole thing over the weekend, right? Like 8
Mhm.
episodes or something. And it's very uplifting. And he does what Bourdain did, but in a kinder, gentler, more Andy Griffith, all shucks kind of way, which I think is wholeheartedly authentic, right? It is completely who he is as a person. It doesn't seem put on at all. But traveling to not just places, he was here near us. He was here on my birthday last
Oh,
weekend.
fun.
And I didn't get to go because we were doing, we were doing the family thing. But he was here in Baltimore. And I'm wondering if he's going to have an episode on Baltimore. I'm really hoping he does. Have you heard of Baltimore?
I've heard of it, but could I tell you much about it?
Yeah,
No.
well, there was a great HBO series called The Wire that basically was like Baltimore is hell and you will die if you go there. But Baltimore has the most incredible food scene. Like Baltimore has this, it's amazing. And it's not just, there's a touristy part of the city by the harbor and all of that. And there's some great restaurants there. But all through Baltimore, there are amazing restaurants. And they're not white tablecloth. There are all of these great places. And I love that. I love that, people are bringing exposure to that. And there are lots of different cultures represented in those restaurants,
Mhm.
which is a lot of fun.
No kidding. It's so interesting that your descriptor for Somebody Feed for Phil Rosenthal, brilliant, Andy Griffith. So that puts us in a certain decade, and if you know, you know. But
And
that you nailed it. But I didn't know a whole lot. I know, I mean, people are going to be like, "What?" But I didn't know a whole lot about Anthony Bourdain prior to starting in my kitchen. I mean, I liked his shows. I'd watched a few, but I wasn't, most people were passionate about him. And I was drawn more to, I'm going to get her name mistaken. She's coming to speak in Vancouver. Salt, acid,
Samin
heat.
Nosrat.
Demi Nasra, yeah. And Somebody Feeds Phil. I know I love her too. And I think it's because of exactly what you said. There is a bit more of a welcoming piece to it. And it didn't have to be off the charts or super edgy for them to very, very gracious in how they are with the people they meet. And I think very not, and I'm Anthony Bourdain now is, I'm not doing any comparison, but also there is like a lot of love there, and it didn't matter who they met. And one of my guests on one of my episodes, she was actually on Somebody Feed Phil. She's from Taiwan. And she said he is as lovely, he and his wife, off camera. She said whenever they stopped filming, they would race around and go try more of the food, different food stands and food stalls. Because I asked her, do they really eat that much? And she's like, oh yeah, it was wonderful. So yeah. Anyway,
I love that. And I have to stick up for myself for a second. My husband was watching an absolutely terrible movie the other night from 1958 with Andy Griffith in it. And that is why he sprung to mind. It was a terrible movie. It was so bad. But it had kind of that aw shucks thing. And I love the love. Like I love the approach of the love because everything, it is a tricky time right
Mhm.
now. And I know you are blessedly in Canada, but it is a difficult time in the world right now. And here in the US, it's just there's a lot of tension everywhere.
Mhm.
So anybody who's leading with all of this love, I'm like, heck yeah, give it to me. I want to see the kinder, gentler side of everything. I'm craving it so much because I feel like I've got my hackles up all the time, right? Like trying to be prepared for something terrible that's happening somewhere. So I love the leading with love. And I love that you're doing this,
And what better way than through food and
right?
travel and sharing a meal together? Actually, you'll be very interested in this because you bring a lot of connection and happiness to people through what you do. The World Health Report, the 2025 World Health Report, and I might get this slightly wrong, but you'll get the gist of it. Sharing a meal together around a table was topped income and employment for a measure of well-being and thriving and happiness,
Yeah.
which is
Do you
quite
know it's
something.
one of the tenets of the Mediterranean diet it's not just what you're putting in your, I'm gonna sound so like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs here, but it's not just like what you're putting in your body, it's what you're putting in your brain.
Mhm.
So like when I'm doing anything, I teach these classes for Johns Hopkins University. They have a program called OSHER, and it's older folks who are really lovely and smart. And I am always saying to them, because you end up where you're one person or maybe you're two people, but your kids are definitely gone. They've got their own lives going. There's all this stuff. And loneliness is a real thing. It's a huge thing. And that satisfaction of sharing a meal with someone, it goes so much further than just that half hour that you're sitting there and hanging out. So whenever I do the AARP cooking classes. Whenever I do those, I always challenge them and say, hey, next month, bring a friend. Like just sit beside a friend and have coffee or have mimosas or have, kitchen vodka. Do whatever you do. But yeah, you're so right. That is such a big part of it.
And those, because I followed you a little bit. Those are online, are they not?
Yeah, I do tons of stuff online. Do you do any online?
Yeah, it's super interesting. We're going to come back to it, but we haven't for a while, and it's part of a whole pivot. But when we did move to online, I was really worried that we weren't going to be everything that I based in my kitchen on goes back to how I grew up. And it was those feelings of connection and love around the table. And my father was from Pakistan, my mom was from New Zealand, and both those cultures, you did a lot of that. Although my dad, we always joke, he was more Japanese than Pakistani. That's another story. But it was all about it happened very naturally and you didn't label things. So that's what I was trying to bring in within my kitchen is I wanted people to learn about Layla from Rasht, Iran, or Suha from Qatar, Raymond from Vietnam, but not it be prescribed, like not it be labeled, just to happen very naturally by cooking together and sharing the meal together. So it was that food piece that
Yeah.
was the focus. And I thought when everything happened and we had to move online, how are we going to bring that online? I was blown away at how strong connections were online. And I really hope somebody does some studies behind it. I saw a study recently that showed with university kids, actually your audience will love this, by the same demographic, is if you FaceTime with your teen in university versus just texting, both participants get much more of those positive emotions, and well-being indicator goes way higher than if you're just texting. So I like to think the online does something, but I'm curious about your thoughts on that too, because the online culinary experiences, one time we had a family across North America doing an event together online,
Yeah, yeah.
and some of the relatives had never actually met before. It was amazing. Like some of the little kids were the older ones. So I don't know where I was going with all that, except that
Well, I can tell you, I went kicking and screaming into the online, right? Because I did everything in person. And the idea, I mean, 5 years ago, the idea of doing things online that, let's say 5.5, that just wasn't it was the solution to the problem we were being handed. And everybody looked at it like it was, just a temporary thing. This, we're going to go online, the world will recover, and then we'll be back to normal. And I fully expected, like, maybe I'd be able to do a little something with it. I was telling somebody the other day that I have found more joy in the online than, first of all, than I ever thought possible. But I think even more than when I was teaching, like owning my school. Because the people, so now it's not so much that everybody turns their cameras off, right? It's not so much of that. And thank goodness, because I'm like, if you turn your camera on, nobody else has to see it. I'm going to pin myself, right? I'm going to pin me. I'm going to pin my food cam. Like, you don't have to look at anyone else. I'm going to, because I can see if they're cooking. I mean, literally, Paula, one time I watched somebody, it was so funny. I watched somebody like run across their kitchen with a smoking pan, and I was in tears. It was so funny. And I was like, oh, you could turn your camera off if you want. But, it was so funny, and they were so good-natured and so sweet. But I have people from all over the country. Like, when I do this AARP thing, I have 2 women in Hawaii now. There are 2 of them. And I don't think they're together. I think they're in different places. They get up at 5 a.m. so they can just watch me babble, right? I mean, what sweethearts. And it's like, I look for their names. I look for my gal from Morristown, New Jersey, right? I look for Lisa from the Bronx. I'm looking for everyone. I'm looking for Francis in Nebraska, because now I feel like we have this connection. Don't you think I think you have to do it right now. I don't think you can be lazy about it. I think you have to really be focused in, and you can't just do a huge, I mean, when I do this, it's, I have really big classes through AARP, but when I do it for myself, like I've got my little Mediterranean Magic for Midlife class kicking off next week, right? When I do it for myself, the classes are much smaller, and it's a very personal experience, and I can get as deep in as they want to go. Like, we'll go off on a tangent if it's something that they're interested in. I think it's incredible. I would love to see studies someday too.
Yeah. And we do plan to bring them back. And actually what we plan to do is bring them back because every podcast guest, I ask them to bring a recipe to share, because I'm curious and it's interesting to see what they share. So I'd like to do those recipes with that guest online is kind of the plan. But when you do your small online groups, do they all have their cameras? Like, are they seeing each other as well? Or do you keep it?
It's their call.
Right.
It's totally their call. So when I do that class, most of the time, everyone is cooking along. So I've started, giving them a list of, this is how the class is going to play out. And if they want the camera on, I never pressure them, because, some days you just have that day.
Right.
And you look like a troll and you feel like a troll, and you can barely just even get into the class, right? And you just want to get through it because you paid the money for it and you're doing the thing. But yeah, I let people do what they want, but they start putting their cameras on. And I mean, there's a lot of give and take, I think, with that, because like, we're looking at each other right now as we're recording this, and you have a wonderful smile. So every time I look and you're smiling or you're laughing, I mean, that gives you such a great boost. And then it's easier to keep going. And as an instructor, that's it too, right? I have
100%.
one woman who she doesn't cook along typically, but she takes notes. She's an artist. Her name's Kathy. And she takes these notes that are gorgeous, like pictures of eggplants, and like she does, zucchinis, and here's an onion, and she does these gorgeous drawings with these notes. And it's such a charge for me to get that. She'll share them with me after class. Oh, it's so cool. But it's such a charge to see how different people take the class in.
That's so interesting what she's getting out of it that way. And what you said about like you and I are feeding off each other, and you get even online, there's a connection. And I call them my women or my community, my people, when they go traveling is I have this slogan now is the piece of it is encouraging people to slow down, savor, and smile. And that smile piece is about creating those little micro connections. So, like you said, with cooking too, is it's not, or being at the table, it's not necessarily the food, it's also what's happening in the brain. And in your travels, it's not necessarily traveling through and what you're taking from it. It's also what you're leaving behind. And if you have a small connection with somebody in the market and that you share a smile, that benefits both of you. And there's science behind it too, which I find fascinating. And that carries on not just for that moment, like you were just saying as well.
Yeah, I have to tell you, and this is not like a self-congratulations thing. It's going to seem like it, but I was at the farmer's market, I don't know, last month sometime, and there is a woman who owns an oil and vinegar shop there. Her name's Sharon Strep. Beautiful shop. And there's a vinegar of hers I cannot get enough of. I mean, I make like a beurre blanc out of it. Like I do all sorts of stuff. It's so good. And I just wanted to grab a bottle, and there was a younger guy, maybe my son's age, like late 20s, with his girlfriend or his wife, I don't know. And he was kind of intimidated because, she had this whole thing, right, of all of these options. So I just bought a bottle and gave it to him and said, here, now take this and go and make something awesome and then come back and tell Sharon how good it was. And there you go. I mean, it was not an expensive thing.
Oh,
It
how
was a couple of
sweet.
bucks. Well, but what it was, like, I kind of saw it. First of all, I was feeling myself, but it was like I don't know, I really saw it as an opportunity to get him excited in the kitchen, right? And it was kind of bringing that along. So we should encourage people to do something like that. Couple of
Absolutely.
bucks, good psychic return. We love that.
My partner Steve and I were in Portugal. When were we there? In March. And we sat up at a restaurant, like a small, it was great actually. I can't remember the name of it, but we were sitting up at the bar and we started talking to the young man beside us. So he was like third year university. It was really interesting. He was telling us what it was like in Lisbon. And I was very curious about with the influx of tourists, how that impact, because there's a lot of negative impact as well as positive. And so he really opened up to us, and he was telling us about the restaurant that he's going to open up and what it was going to look like, what it was going to be like. And he was very passionate about it. And he was a student, and we laughed. And unbeknownst to me, Steve had quietly, like, I'm out there, Christine, you and I we've got big personalities. Steve is an observer, a really good listener, takes it all in. Anyway, unbeknownst to me, he had paid for this young man's dinner before we left. And it was this,
Oh.
he'll never know, well, he might figure out who or what, but it was one of those acts of like just doing something like you did, just in the moment without overthinking it, and made somebody's day.
That's where my lottery fantasies all come in. I don't know. Do you have these obnoxious lotteries in Canada like we do in the US?
Well, I don't, maybe ours like 20 million. You're probably in the billions there.
We just had one that was over $1 billion.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And when I know it's stupid money, right? So so for my 4 listeners, I'm sorry, I digress, but I love a lottery fantasy. So my husband and I get these lottery fantasies, and it's like, okay, let's talk about how it's going to break out. And we're always like, the only way we will survive is if we give almost all of it away. And it is so much fun. That's the most fun to me, figuring out how you would give it all away, so that you stay happy and married. And I mean, listen, I'm going to have a pool. I'm going to have 3 dogs. They're just things that are going to happen. But it's so much fun thinking about, so those little things like buying, paying for someone's dinner. And I always think too, it's kind of a pay it forward sort of deal, right? So It's just a different vibe. So you're going to bring back, I want to come back to, because when I owned my school, everybody always wanted all the international classes. And seriously, I make excellent sushi. You would not think that
I, looking at me, would make excellent sushi. I really do a good job with it. But there are so many cuisines, right? Like everybody always wanted us to offer Korean. And it was like, I had a woman who worked with me who traveled to Vietnam a lot and traveled to China a lot. So I could let her do things because she was cooking over there with them. She's doing all that stuff. But it was really important to me to try to figure who's teaching this that really has real experience with it, who kind of grew up this way. So first of all, I think that's a great idea if you are doing that because people love that. People really love that. And I think a lot of folks really want that connection with other cultures.
I think so too. And I think it's very different. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. It's a preference for me, but I think it's very different learning from a professional chef who's teaching techniques versus a home cook who's passing on things that they learned from their nonna or their previous generation.
I'll agree with that.
And it depends what you want. So we always say in our experiences that you're not going to learn technique so much because I often get people who want to learn knife skills or they want to. And I said, well, you'll learn some, but it may not be like I'm doing quotation marks correct. But it wasn't about that. And I always referred to them as experiences versus classes because I think there's a place for both. And I didn't want to misrepresent. So I forgot what your question was, but I'm sure there was one there. All that to say, yeah,
I like what you're doing.
It was great. And these culinary experiences were also like Melissa, they would share stories about how they grew up, right? Because it's all about what I was curious about. And the people who took the experiences had the same curiosities as I did. So it was getting those stories from people. So when we moved online, I was on those online experiences as a facilitator with our hosts to draw out those stories. And that was the piece because they were nervous to be on, as I would, to be on by themselves. But we also realized, as you would know, it's very difficult to cook and talk and be online and do all of that at the same time. So I think the experiences and learning from somebody who's from the place is beneficial when it's not just when you're not looking for technique. I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody teaching a sushi course from any culture who wants to share how to make sushi and you might have stories from you might have a friend who is from Japan and you're telling stories about your visits there. And I think that's wonderful. Any connection over food. So I agree with you. I think what I'm getting, what's coming to mind is the pendulum swung a little bit. I want to see if you agree with me. About 5 years ago, where there was this real backlash against appropriation of cultural dishes. Do you remember that? And
yeah, very clearly.
Yeah, and one of them was somebody, a blogger, and I forget who it is now. Somebody that was quite well known. She posted a delicious recipe for a soup, and it was her recipe, and it had the name ramen in it, but it wasn't like this is a traditional ramen. She wasn't misrepresenting it, in my opinion. But there was a lot of backlash that it was cultural appropriation. And Melissa, who's our Umbrian host from Italy, we had a good chat about this. And Melissa's hilarious. And she's like, come on, like everybody's not making lasagna, and calling it lasagna. So I think
it's a delicate, excuse me. It's a delicate balance, I think. Because, I am a middle-aged white woman from PA, New York, and Maryland. And I want to be super respectful. It's so important to me to not be like, I'm trying to appropriate something. But that said, like, I don't have a drop of Italian in me, but I can make great Italian food, right? So it's just, I try to be really careful with it. I try to be super respectful about it because there's so much cool stuff coming from every culture. And, I love it so much. But there are things that I'm careful about teaching because I am trying to be more technique based in that. And Mediterranean diet, we're talking principles, right? And that stuff is easy because it's more of an idea of what you'll eat instead of how you'll prepare. I mean, I guess how you'll prepare. but it's healthy fats and lean proteins and lots of beans and, all of that good stuff. So I feel safe in there. I feel really good in there. Also, it's made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah.
So I feel really good about that. But yeah, I remember that we've had a lot here.
Yeah. And I
So,
think you do a great job of making, like, you don't want people to be afraid. Like, we're talking about learning about culture through food. There's so much you can learn about the ingredients that are being used and why, and the history of the food. And
yeah.
I'm now learning more about culinary advocacy, which I never had really thought about before, and how, and identity of place. And the more everybody shares and cooks these dishes, the more those stories and those values get passed around the table, literally. So I think to your point is, if people are concerned, you just, and this was what was wonderful about our host, is you just ask somebody, or say, like you've just said now, I'm not from here, but this is how I do it, or this is who taught me, and this is my story behind it. But I also think it's great if people aren't afraid to experiment and try and learn these dishes themselves as well.
Yeah, I agree. So before we go, do you have anything that you wanna tell? I always say I have 4 listeners, right? Because this is a passion project. Let's just say that. But do you have anything special you'd like to share with us?
Oh, I'm just super grateful to be here and just to have this
Oh,
chance to chat with you, Christine. Honestly, I think I just can't understate the value of connection. And I think connecting through food is such a wonderful way to do it, however you do it. Even if it means you've been away on a trip and you come home and you want to share some of the dishes that you tried and the stories behind it, order takeout and invite some friends over. It doesn't have to be made from scratch. It doesn't have to be complicated. And just remember, in your own kitchen, in your travels, every stage of your life, this is what's been having a positive influence on me, is slow down, savor, and smile.
oh, I love that. I love that. And Paula, where can everybody find you?
Yes, so exploreinmykitchen.com is our community platform, and that has all of our podcasts, all the newsletters are there, recipes. I will ask you to sign up because we're building a community here, but it is free. You can also go to our website, inmykitchen.ca, and learn more about In My Kitchen and what we do. And of course,
I think signing up is a very small price to pay. People don't understand how much time and effort goes into writing a newsletter. You're not popping it in ChatGPT. I've been using an M dash my whole life. Thank you very much. And now I can't use them anymore. But I think that is a very inexpensive price of admission. So
yeah,
perfect. Sign up there, and then you have your podcast, right?
We have that podcast, so that's on all, be on your favorite platform or at Explore in My Kitchen. Because what I found, a lot of people don't use the platform. So part of creating this community was an easy place to listen, because I think they're amazing. I think they're wonderful because it's the people that I interview that bring so much literally to the table. So that show is In My Kitchen with Paula, if you do want to listen on your own platforms. And then on Instagram at In My Kitchen Paula on Instagram.
I listen.
Thanks, Christine. I love it.
I listen. Of course I do. Paula, you're such a ray of sunshine. Thank you for taking the time and for the 3-hour time difference and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate you having me on the show, Christine.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Of course. So now y'all know, and I am going to put it in the show notes as well so that you can just go and click there to find your way to Paula. And hopefully she's going to get that kicking again soon, because I think those classes sound amazing. And I personally am ready to take them.
Well, I think you and I should do an online class together for our communities.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Fun.
I'm in. Can I just say, my community is it's small but mighty, and I just love them so much. And they show up once a month. The people that are in my meal plan program come and do a live class with me, and they're always smiling and It's such a boost. It's such a, like, emotionally, what do we say? It fills my cup.
Fills your
So
cup,
I think we
yeah.
could fill some cups.
Yes. Well, you know what? Even better is I'll invite my community to sign up for your experiences, and then I'll offer some of the amazing interviews that I've had and bring them on for experience.
I love
Yeah.
this. I
Yeah,
love
let's do
this.
it.
All right, guys. So
Go
we
on.
have all sorts of good stuff. Paul and I are going to figure it all out. So thank you for taking the time this week to listen. You are so wonderful, and I appreciate you every single week. You know that. And as always, you know that I will see you in the kitchen.